Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Mhm.
Today we're going to dive into the world of interactive e-textbooks.
Ooh.
We're going to be focusing on the work of Looking Care, Lawrence Wee, an educator from the Ministry of Education in Singapore.
Okay.
He's been using this program called Easy JavaScript Simulations,
Easy Java.
or EjsS,
Okay.
to create these really cool e-textbooks for high school physics.
Cool.
We've got a collection of documents about his work, all centered around this presentation that he gave at a conference in Germany a couple years ago.
Awesome. So what's so special about this EJSS? What does it let you do that makes it exciting?
It really allows students to actually see physics in action.
Oh,
Like imagine a student struggling with gravity.
right.
With EjSS, they can actually change a planet's mass in the simulation and then instantly see how that affects the gravitational pull on objects.
Oh, I see. So like it's almost like they're running their own little experiment
Exactly.
instead of just like reading about it.
Exactly. It's learning by doing.
Yeah.
It brings those abstract formulas to life.
It makes it real, right?
Yeah.
So how did this guy looking get started with this stuff?
Well, back in 2014, he attended this EjSS workshop in Singapore.
Okay.
It was led by these two guys, Francisco Escombra and Wolfgang Christian.
I know those guys.
Oh, you know them.
Yeah, those guys are awesome. They're like pioneers in this open source physics movement.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, like
I've heard of that.
making physics education like freely available to everybody so everybody can get access to those resources and learn physics.
Okay, so kind of like open source software,
Yeah,
but for physics education.
exactly. Yeah, and it seems like this workshop really sparked something in Looking
Oh, wow.
because he spent the next 6 months
No kidding.
developing these prototypes for interactive e-textbook chapters focusing on simple harmonic motion and gravity.
Okay.
And he even tailored these prototypes specifically for the Singapore-Cambridge A-level curriculum,
Oh, wow.
which is kind of similar to like the AP courses we have here,
Yeah.
advanced placement.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so clearly he was very passionate about bringing this technology to his students.
Wow, 6 months of development.
Yeah, he put a lot of work into this.
Yeah, a lot of work. So
Yeah.
tell me more about EJSS. What can you actually do with this program?
It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's incredibly versatile. Like it lets you create these interactive simulations where students can adjust parameters like the mass of an object or the angle of a ramp, and then immediately see how those changes affect the outcome.
Okay.
They're like you can visualize how changing the angle of a projectile launch affects its trajectory all in real time.
So for visual learners, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can embed these simulations within the text and illustrations
Oh, cool.
and potentially even create like assessments or quizzes
Oh, wow.
right within the e-textbook.
That's awesome.
And the fact that EjSS generates JavaScript code is a game changer too,
Oh, so.
because it means these simulations can run on pretty much any device.
Okay.
Computers, tablets, even smartphones. Wow. So no matter what technology students have, they can still access it.
Exactly. Yeah, accessibility is key.
Yeah, and it sounds like it have all these cool features.
Yeah.
So how did he actually bring all of this to life in his e-textbooks?
Well, he created 2 separate e-textbooks,
Right.
one on simple harmonic motion and one on gravity.
Oh,
What's interesting is he made them available not just through like the EJSS Singapore Digital Library, which is like a hub for this kind of stuff,
right.
but also on commercial platforms like Apple iBooks, Google Play, and Kindle.
Wow. So he really was thinking about widespread distribution,
Yeah.
making them as available as possible.
It's really impressive that he was thinking about that, making it easy for people to access.
Yeah.
And, he didn't just want to create these e-textbooks. He wanted to like inspire a whole movement of educators,
Oh, wow.
creating and sharing open educational resources like this.
So kind of democratizing education,
Exactly.
taking it beyond, the big publishers.
Yeah, exactly. That's the idea.
That's really cool. And,
Yeah.
and he was already looking ahead to the future, thinking about incorporating features like automated marking and assessment.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
That would be huge, especially for personalized learning, providing feedback and stuff.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to see someone so dedicated to kind of pushing the boundaries like that. But, new approaches often come with new challenges, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When Lukang presented his work at this big conference in Munich,
Mm-hmm.
the International Conference on Multimedia in Physics Teaching and Learning,
Wow.
some of the reviewers raised some interesting points. They were curious about the design challenges of creating an effective interactive e-textbook.
Right. You can't just throw a bunch of simulations into a digital document and call it a day.
Exactly.
There has to be some sort of thought behind it.
It's going to be a good learning experience, right?
Yeah. And that makes me think about the narrative style of these e-textbooks. Like,
Yeah.
how do you weave together, the text, the illustrations, and these interactive elements to create a compelling learning experience that actually works?
Right. It's not like a traditional textbook where you just read from beginning to end.
Right.
You've got these branching paths,
Yeah.
different ways to explore a concept.
Uh-huh.
So the narrative structure needs to be more flexible, more adaptable to the choices that a student might make.
So is it less about telling a linear story and more about creating a learning environment
Exactly.
where they can explore at their own pace?
Exactly. Giving students agency,
Yeah.
empowering them to make choices and see the consequences.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah. And it sounds like these e-textbooks have the potential to be way more engaging.
Oh, for sure. And
Like,
personalized than traditional textbooks.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that brings us to another question. How effective were they in practice?
Yeah.
Did students actually learn better?
Right. Did they actually work?
And what kind of feedback did he get from teachers?
Good questions. And I'm actually really curious to see what the answers are because, unfortunately, the research papers and articles that we have don't really go into a lot of detail about
Oh, really?
the practical implementation and impact of these e-textbooks. There's a lot of focus on like the technical aspects
Oh, okay.
and the potential benefits, but not so much on, what actually happened.
So we don't really know how well they worked.
It seems like this is still early,
Yeah.
This kind of research is still in its early stages.
I guess that's not uncommon with new educational approaches. It takes time to gather data,
Yeah.
see how they work and get that
Yeah,
feedback
absolutely.
and make improvements.
Exactly. So more research needs to be done in this area.
For sure. For sure. But, even without all the answers, I think these questions that were raised by the reviewers at that conference are really valuable.
Yeah.
They highlight the areas where more exploration is needed.
Absolutely. We
Yeah.
need to move beyond the theoretical and get into the practical, How do we actually design these things to be user-friendly for both students and teachers? How do we make sure the simulations are actually helpful?
Right. And not just adding another layer of complexity.
Exactly. And how do we address the digital divide?
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, we talked about, accessibility on different devices.
Right.
But what about students who don't have reliable internet access at home?
That is a big issue.
It is a crucial point. Equity and access are paramount.
Yeah,
We need to make sure that everyone has access to these tools, regardless of their background
for sure.
or where they live.
Absolutely.
These are all important questions that we need to think about.
Yeah, definitely. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about his vision for the future of e-textbooks.
Okay.
We touched on this briefly, but I'd love to hear more about what his ideas were for taking these to the next level.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, he was super passionate about the idea of open educational resources. He saw EjsS and these interactive e-textbooks as tools for democratizing education,
Right.
making high-quality learning materials available to everyone,
Yeah.
not just those who can afford, expensive textbooks.
That's a powerful vision, especially these days, where access to information is so important.
Absolutely. And he believed that by, building a community
Yeah.
of educators who are creating and sharing these resources,
Yeah,
we could really improve the quality of education worldwide.
that's awesome.
Yeah. And he also saw the potential for incorporating even more advanced features.
Like the automated marking and assessments that we talked about.
Exactly. He believed that by automating some of the more tedious tasks like grading quizzes and providing feedback,
Yeah.
teachers could have more time
Right.
to focus on, personalized instruction.
Right, the important stuff.
Exactly. Mentoring students, working with them one-on-one.
And building relationships.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And it would also give students, more immediate feedback.
Oh, yeah.
Help them identify areas where they need to improve.
Right.
Give them more opportunities to practice.
It's really exciting to think about the possibilities.
Oh, for sure.
But I also imagine that there are challenges to implementing those advanced features as well.
Of course.
Yeah.
There are always challenges when you're pushing the boundaries like this.
Right.
For example, developing really good assessment tools, automated assessment tools, that's really complex. You need to be able to accurately measure student learning
Right.
and provide meaningful feedback.
Which is not always easy.
It's not easy, yeah.
And there are ethical considerations as well.
Oh, absolutely.
I need to make sure these algorithms are fair and unbiased and not making existing inequalities worse.
Right, yeah. Those are critical issues that need to be addressed.
Definitely. So it seems like there's a lot of potential for interactive e-textbooks to transform education,
Yeah.
but there are also some big challenges to overcome.
For sure. And that brings us to a question for our listener. If you were to design an interactive e-textbook on a topic you're passionate about, what would it look like?
Yeah.
What innovative features would you include?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the possibilities.
Yeah, would you focus on creating like super realistic simulations where students could experiment?
Yeah.
Or would you incorporate more game-like elements to make learning fun? Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Or maybe a combination of both.
Maybe both. Why not? Yeah.
What about interactive storytelling?
Ooh.
Could you create an e-textbook that's like a choose-your-own-adventure novel
I love that idea.
where the students' choices determine the path of the story
That's really cool.
and their learning journey?
Yeah. It'd be amazing to create something that's both educational and immersive, where students really feel like they're part of it.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about all those creative possibilities.
Yeah.
And it's clear that Lookang's work has kind of paved the way for a new era of education.
Absolutely.
But before we get too carried away with thinking about the future, let's come back to the present and look at the specifics of his e-textbooks.
Okay.
We'll do that in part 2 of our deep dive.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about, those design challenges
Sure.
of integrating simulations into e-textbooks, and how do you do it without overwhelming students?
It really is a balancing act.
It is, yeah. And it makes me wonder about, like, the writing style,
Oh, yeah.
the narrative style of these e-textbooks.
Yeah, how do you kind of weave together all those pieces,
Right.
the text and the illustrations and the interactive elements?
Yeah, how do you create a good flow?
Yeah, to create an effective learning experience.
Right, because it's not like a traditional textbook,
Right.
where you just read straight through. You've got these branching paths, different
Right.
ways to explore a concept.
Yeah.
So the narrative structure has to be more adaptable.
Right, more flexible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So the choices that the student makes.
So it's less about telling a linear story and more about creating an environment where students can discover and explore
Exactly.
at their own pace.
It's about giving students agency.
Yeah.
Letting them make choices and see what happens.
I like that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it sounds like these e-textbooks have the potential to be so much more engaging
Oh, yeah.
and personalized than traditional textbooks.
For sure.
Right. But that brings us to another really important question.
Okay.
How effective were Lookang's e-textbooks?
Yeah. Did they actually work?
In practice, did students actually learn better using them?
That's the big question, right?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
And what kind of feedback did he get from teachers?
Oh, that's a good one, too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the research papers and articles that we have
Okay.
don't go into a lot of detail about that,
Oh, yeah.
The practical implementation and the impact.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of focus on like the technical stuff,
Right.
the potential benefits, but not so much on what actually happened in the classroom.
So we don't really know how well they worked.
We don't really know yet.
Yeah.
It seems like the research is still in its early stages.
I guess that's not uncommon
Yeah.
for a new educational approach.
Right. It takes time to gather data,
Yeah.
to figure out, what works and what doesn't.
And get that feedback from teachers.
Exactly.
Yeah, to make improvements.
So more research definitely needs to be done.
But even without all the answers,
Yeah.
I think those questions that the reviewers brought up at the conference are really valuable
Oh, absolutely.
because they highlight those areas where we need to explore further.
Exactly. Yeah, we need to move beyond just talking about it in theory
Right.
and get to the practical stuff. Like, how do we design these e-textbooks to be user-friendly for both students and teachers?
Right.
How do we make sure that the simulations are actually enhancing learning?
And not just making things more complicated.
Exactly. And how do we address that digital divide? We talked about access on different devices, but
Right.
what about students who don't have good internet at home?
That's a huge issue.
It is. Yeah, it's a really important point.
Yeah, equity and access are so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that all students
Yeah.
have access to these tools, regardless of their background or where they live.
Definitely.
These are big questions that we need to address as we move forward.
For sure. For sure. But for now, let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about Lookang's vision for the future
Okay.
of e-textbooks. We've touched on this briefly,
Yeah.
but I'd love to hear more about his ideas for taking these to the next level.
Well, he was super passionate about those open educational resources. He saw EjsS and these interactive e-textbooks as tools for democratizing education,
Right.
making these high-quality materials available to everybody,
Yeah.
not just those who can afford the expensive textbooks.
That's an important vision.
It is, especially today when, access to information and education is becoming even more important.
Absolutely.
And he believed that by fostering a community of educators, creating and sharing these resources, we could really make a difference in the quality of education worldwide.
That's a great vision.
Yeah. And he also saw the potential for incorporating more advanced features into e-textbooks.
Like that automated marking and assessment we were talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He thought that by automating some of those more routine tasks, like grading quizzes, providing feedback, teachers could have more time to focus on, personalized instruction and mentoring.
The important stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, it would free up so much time.
Right. And it would also give students, more immediate feedback on their work.
Oh, for sure.
Which can help them improve.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a win-win.
It's exciting to think about all the possibilities.
It is.
But I'm sure there are challenges too, right?
Yeah. Oh, of course. There are always challenges when you're trying to do something new and innovative.
Yeah.
Like, for example, developing those automated assessment tools. That's really complex.
It is, yeah.
You need to be able to measure student learning accurately and provide meaningful feedback.
Right. Which is not always easy with, an algorithm.
No, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And you also have to think about the ethical considerations.
Oh, right.
You want to make sure that those algorithms are fair.
Right. And unbiased.
Exactly. And that they're not perpetuating, existing inequalities.
Yeah, those are all important things to consider.
They are, yeah. It's clear that there's a ton of potential here.
Oh, yeah.
For interactive e-textbooks to really transform education.
Yeah.
But there are also significant challenges.
Definitely. So that kind of brings us to a question for our listener.
Okay.
If you were to design an interactive e-textbook on a topic that you're passionate about, what would it look like? What kinds of cool features would you include?
That's a great question. It really gets you thinking.
It does.
Would you focus on creating those super realistic simulations where students can really experiment and discover things on their own? Or would you incorporate more like game-like elements to make learning more fun and engaging?
Ooh, I like that.
Maybe a combination of both.
Right.
Why not, right?
Yeah.
What about interactive storytelling?
Ooh.
Could you create an e-textbook that unfolds like a choose-your-own-adventure novel?
I love that.
Me too.
Where the students' choices determine the path of the story.
Right, and their learning journey.
That would be so cool.
It would be amazing to create an e-textbook that's both educational and immersive, where students feel like they're really active participants in the learning process.
It's inspiring to think about all the creative possibilities.
It is.
And, it's clear that Lucan's work has paved the way for this new era of educational innovation.
He was a pioneer.
Yeah, but before we get too carried away thinking about the future, let's bring it back down to earth.
All right.
And take a closer look at the specifics of his e-textbooks.
Let's do it.
We'll do that in part 3 of our deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of interactive e-textbooks. We've talked about Looking's vision for the future and all the potential of EjsS, but now let's actually take a look at the e-textbooks that he created.
Yeah, let's get into the details.
So he developed 2 e-textbooks, one focusing on simple harmonic motion and the other on gravity.
Okay.
Both are packed with interactive simulations designed to help students really understand these concepts.
Yeah, to really visualize it,
Yeah, give me an example. Like, what do these simulations actually look like?
Well, in the Simple Harmonic Motion e-textbook,
Okay.
there's a simulation where students can actually play around with a virtual spring.
Oh, wow.
They can change the mass attached to the spring and the spring's stiffness, and then they can see how those changes affect the oscillation.
That's something you just can't do with a regular textbook.
Exactly. It makes it so much more real and engaging.
So it's like a hands-on experiment.
Yeah. Exactly.
But virtual.
The virtual, yeah.
I like it. What about the gravity e-textbook? Any cool simulations in that one?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
There's one where students can actually manipulate the mass of a planet and then see how that affects the gravitational force on objects nearby.
So they can see how, like, changing the planet's mass would affect the orbits of moons?
Exactly.
Oh, like a comet.
Yeah, it's like having a little universe at your fingertips.
That's so cool.
Right.
And these are just a couple of examples.
Yeah, just to give you an idea.
Both e-textbooks are available through the EjsS Singapore Digital Library.
Right.
And even on like Apple iBooks and Google Play and Kindle.
Yeah, he really wanted to make them accessible.
That's amazing. As we wrap up this deep dive, it really strikes me that Looking Story is a great example of how one person who's passionate can really make a difference in education.
Absolutely.
He saw a problem. Traditional textbooks not really engaging students.
Right. They can be kind of boring.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he did something about it. He learned these new tools and created these amazing resources.
Yeah, he put in a lot of time and effort.
And he shared his work openly.
Yeah. He didn't keep it to himself.
He wanted others to benefit.
Exactly. He wanted to create a movement.
Yeah, and he was already looking ahead to the future,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about how technology can transform education.
Really inspiring.
It is. So what's our final takeaway for our listeners today?
I think the takeaway is this. If you're passionate about something,
Yeah.
think about how you can bring it to life for others.
Mm-hmm.
Could you create an interactive experience, a video, a course, a community forum?
The possibilities are endless.
They really are.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It was fun.
It was. Yeah, we hope you enjoyed it. And remember, the best knowledge is the knowledge we put into action.
That's right.
So go out there, explore, create, and share your passion with the world.
Make a difference.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.